have, at Beijing and India and New York meet, Guillermo from Chile, who is here with us, Sasapin, who is here from Thailand, and of course two Indian artists and in India, Sunil, who is with us. So it is quite another session. So thank you all for participating, and let's jump right into our next. And again, Tamila and James, it really means a lot to me that you took the time and came back to us and talk about things which you, I'm sure, also asked so much to talk about, and you must be tired of it, but it's really a great contribution. And I would like to
thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you.
This is really important, and you have been such a great participant, so that means a lot to me personally. So
thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, really, really, really thank you. And let's do a fast before we start with Sunil, a fast round. Sasapin, where are you and what time is it? Sasapin?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm calling from Bangkok. It's 9 in the morning.
You're already living in the future.
Yeah, I'm on the 21st of July. Yeah.
Incredible. Guillermo, where are you?
Santiago, Chile, and it's 10 p.m.
It's 10 p.m., so we have the same time. And Sunil, where are you at the moment?
Well, I'm in Mumbai, Maharashtra, India, and it's 7:30 in the morning here.
So you were lucky as the Indian artist. You didn't have to be up in the night. They gave you a good spot.
Well, yeah, I think they looked at my gray beard and said, "Well, you can come in the morning and not in the middle of the night." Thank God for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. We are doing it for all of the listeners who joined us, and thank you for taking the time. It's a 24-hour marathon. We have half of it behind us. It's a global a show of compassion, for the situation in India, but also celebrating the work of all theater artists who have contributed to make it a better place in that time of Corona, and to see and check in how everybody is, and a little knock on the door that says, "How are you? What do you do?" So, how is it in your part where you are in India? So, how is the situation at the moment? The reason we did this is my talk with Abhishek. At that time, he, when he said, people are dying in June still, people had to be burned on the streets because there were morgues, had no places. There was not even oxygen available. And he worked tirelessly night after night. After the Siegel talk, he said, I have to call 114 people. We tried to connect them to the hospitals. His group of people were buying old oxygen machines. They were repairing them, and the government really didn't come through. It's a disaster when the rich took their own planes and flew to London and left behind such a big mess. So it's got a bit better, we hear, but how is it where you are, Sunil?
Well, Frank, fortunately that phase got over and things are calmer now. Mumbai is in pretty good shape, and in fact we were looking forward to resumption of some restricted performances by middle of July, but that hasn't happened because they've discovered a Delta Plus variant, which is worrying them, and the tail end of the pandemic is a bit thick, as they call it in their language. So the numbers are not dropping as rapidly as they would like, but things are calmer here. Fortunately, though Maharashtra is a bit of a hot spot, we have a lot more cases than other states. But this is the interim. We are all now being told to wait with bated breath for the third wave, which may come anytime. August, I don't know, may not come. So it's uncertainty. But mainly is that we haven't been able to. There's no certainty on when we can perform again. So that's a big problem for us. Yeah.
So it's not as serious as in Bangalore where you are at the moment, but. Still, it's a bit dangerous where one does not know.
Frank, I'm in Mumbai. I'm in Mumbai in Maharashtra, and yes, it's much calmer here now. Some of the other states, they've allowed resumption of performances with 50%, people in the audience, and some states have allowed that, but our state isn't allowing. It's being very cautious about that. So we're still waiting. I don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about you and your work. What do you do?
Well, I'm a theatre director based in Mumbai. I run two theatre companies. One was about 35 years old. It started in 1985 and has worked consistently since then. By Indian standards, that company does kind of mid-scale productions. But the younger company, which I started about 8-9 years ago with a young co-founder who was in fact on the marathon last night, that actually works in smaller, intimate spaces, alternative spaces, and that spends a lot of time looking at the whole theater ecosystem as a whole. So it's a very different. Both the companies have two very different approaches to theater.
And is this play based, or is it outdoor performances? Is it is it a traditional Indian theater form? Tell us a bit.
No, it's contemporary work. A lot of my work is contemporary work. The bigger company, we usually develop an idea and create a script out of it, not devised with actors, but with writers and composers, we create ideas. I'm very interested in history. I'm very interested in contemporary issues. So my plays reflect a lot of that. The smaller company works in small spaces. We also run a curated performance space which can accommodate about 30 to 40 people at any given time. So it's all very, very much more contemporary. I mean, I'll give you an idea. For instance, a couple of years ago, I did something called Words Have Been Uttered, which is really looking at the idea of dissent across cultures, across geographies, across time. The idea was that when things were really getting difficult for artists in India, I thought it was important to start a conversation of the idea of dissent and to demonstrate that dissent as an idea is universal, it's timeless, and it is without dissent you can't move forward in society. So it's a 2-hour show which has poetry, scenes from plays, satire, songs. It's a kind of a collage, and we just sit together and we share this material with the audience for 2 hours. So that's the kind of performance the smaller company would do. The larger company, of course, does bigger work, and identity, working class history, that kind of stuff. So that's almost, I've been pushing into the mainstream as much as I can, because I believe that we need to occupy parts of the mainstream. We're very comfortable in a little, protected spaces on the margins. But I wish the larger company to push into the mainstream with our kind of work. So we've been trying that, not very successfully, but it's there. For whatever it's worth, it's there.
What is this? And how is the situation for you, your company? Do people have work? Can they survive? Do you pay them? Have you been forced out of spaces? Is the government there?
Well, the interesting thing is that the pandemic has taught us many lessons, and the first lesson is that it's now the lie has been nailed that the Indian state has virtually no interest in the arts, right? We all knew it, and it's there. But somebody will say, look, here there are grants and this support is there. But the pandemic has nailed the line. It's very interesting because this is a country where we never miss an opportunity to talk about our great traditions and extol the virtues of our traditions and how old our theater and performing arts history is. I mean, for instance, that the oldest treatise on performing arts, the Natya Shastra, was written here in 500 BC, for heaven's sake, right? So I mean,
it's a book this big, right? It's It's not like a little
no.
This is a serious work.
Right? Yeah, but and so that's the classical stuff, right? And then we have an incredible, diverse folk art landscape here. Amazing, right? I mean, the state will never hesitate before putting folk arts out there at any major diplomatic event because they're fabulous performers, right? And we have a contemporary theater scene, a contemporary dance scene, and a music scene. But what is interesting is that more than 90% of this is not supported by the government or any cultural institution of any kind. I mean, our state can lay no claim for this incredible creative outpouring because they don't support it or sustain it. So the question is, how does it happen? And you've been listening now to, Indians talk. They just do it themselves. We all just do it ourselves, in different ways. I mean, I won't go into this fairly complex thing, but in different ways, we just do it ourselves. So imagine what happens in the pandemic, we aren't on their radar, they've never ever helped us. So we just don't figure. So we were actually virtually invisible for them. I mean, there are cultural institutions of the state, but they are in very poor shape. They are very small budgets and, virtually crippled by bureaucratic lethargy or cynicism, And it's very interesting because as contemporary, makers, the state has a filter when it looks at the cultural landscape, there is an hierarchy. So at the top of the heap are the classical arts, right? Classical music, dance, and they're sacred. Nobody can question them. There's no critique, you know. If you program classical music in your festival, nobody is ever going to question you, right? So it's a very safe place. Uh, Second in the run are the folk artists, and the folk artists are amazing because they are super performers. I mean, amazing performers. But very convenient because the state makes no long-term commitment to their well-being, and they don't demand it either. It's that old patronage system. So it's a use and dispose arrangement. And then you have contemporary practitioners who are a messy lot. They are prone to be argumentative. They're demanding. They're contrarian. They have strong opinions. Terrible. Some of them have Western influences, so no sense of Indian tradition. So best to ignore us. That's the safest option. And if you get too troublesome, bung them into jail. Simple. Yeah. So you can imagine, Frank, at the best of times, in a country which has very poor allocation for health, for education, for poverty alleviation, all of which are very, very real and urgent needs of the people. The arts stand no chance. I mean, if I were to go to somebody and say, look, I need money for theater, they're going to say, children are starving, they need money for food. And I can't say anything because that's very true. And it's terribly unfair to put us in that situation, right? And unless we as a society sit down and have a conversation about, do we value the arts or not? Let's come to some decision on this. And unless we have that conversation, we don't stand a chance. And in the pandemic, nobody's looking at the arts. Nobody's looking at the arts. We don't figure. The fact that we haven't performed for 18 months, literally, I mean, and counting, doesn't seem to bother anybody. And that's really a problem. That's the situation we are in today. Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah, it reminds me of the great German writer Goethe. When he was asked, do we need arts? He said, well, when you are in your house, do you need to paint your walls? Do you need to put a painting up? Do you need to have a nice piece of furniture? Do you want your wife, your partner to look good and attractive? Isn't that what life is all about? And you want to have a carpet,
Sure.
And the same is what the arts do for society. And it is quite stunning, that it is being questioned on this one way. On the other hand, it is then presented as if it is such a great cultural performance when stuff once in a while gets to Asia society here in New York and it's representing its state. I don't know, Sunil, if you prepared a reading or something, you don't have to, maybe we could do it, but we can also, it's so important to listen to you. We can go on with our conversation, whatever you feel.
Sure. So can I just share a couple of other, we've been hearing a lot about what's going on, and I'd really like to concentrate a little bit more on the lessons that we have learned from this pandemic. And, and I think it's really important because as theater makers, it's very easy to blame others and the system. Of course, there are problems, but I think sometimes looking at ourselves and being a little critical helps because you find directions. So I just described the situation that there is with the arts in India. And so this brings me to the lesson number 2 is that we need to help each other, help ourselves, right? And there are systems, we need to strengthen those systems. And it's very interesting that we have, because of a resource poor condition generally, we have certain skills that have come to the fore in any crisis. Actually, the pandemic is the latest one. I mean, we have organization skills. We have the ability to stretch money and make it work for much more than other people normally would be able to. We have the ability to adapt. We are nimble. We're alert. We can communicate with people, and most importantly, Frank, I think we empathize. I think that's really critical. And we've seen all these qualities at work during this pandemic. I mean, at the forefront of all relief work have been theater people across the country without fail. I mean, it's been amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Is
it really true? Throughout India, theater people, artists have been at the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there are, social organizations. But if you look at the arts, generally, it's the theater people who are leading everywhere. And again, it's not, one doesn't want to boast about it. The fact is that theater makes you do, it's collective. First of all, we know how to work together because that's how our work is made, and all the other reasons that I gave. So it is a fact. See, in our own company, in the first lockdown, we instinctively, because it was so sudden, we instinctively started looking at the people around us and how we could help them. So, actors, younger actors who have no other means of sustenance, mostly our support workers, people who make the theater happen, our set boys, our set workers, our lighting people, technicians, costume, makeup people, these are all freelancers in India. They all work on a per show basis. So they need, they need support. So we did that. But in the second lockdown, we have extended this to the larger community of theater workers, even with the people who we have had no personal, professional relationship. I think in your first session last night, Frank, one of your guests talked about the amazing diversity of languages in Mumbai's theater, right? And so that's the fact that it's actually the set workers who bridge all languages. They don't care what language your play is being done in, or which space it is being performed, or what style it is. They are there because they have to put up the sets, they have to do the lights. So this is the large community we've been working with, and it's been quite amazing. About 600, 700 of them who are together in some kind of formal and informal groups. And actually that has taught us that we need larger organizing bodies. We need larger umbrellas, organizations that represent theater interests. And unless we do that, unless we organize, it's going to be like this. And we will really have no one else to blame after a point. So I think that's a very critical lesson. I think the pandemic has also taught us that much of what was dismissed as conspiracy theory, at the beginning, is in fact very, very real for us. I mean, not just in India, all over the world. The pandemic has taught us that you can use a health emergency to take away citizens' rights, suspend them. Major attacks have been on all kinds of dissent. I mean, we are going through this huge spyware controversy even as we speak, and it's amazing that India is in such bad shape. I mean, employment is down, there's just no growth, people are starving, but the stock market is booming. Mm-hmm. The stock market is booming, as it is in America, as it is everywhere else. Why is it that all over the world, the billionaires have profited over this last 18 months, right? What is going on, right? We need to think about this. We can't just dismiss these as conspiracy theories. And unless we come to terms with this, unless we arrive at some decisions, it's going to be very difficult. Yeah, that's really the broad lessons that we've learned. Organize, right? Empathize, and essentially educate yourself. It's going to be this way.
It's true. I mean, perhaps this 24-hour marathon for the first time, if I understand right, from Tanvin Abhishek brought theater practitioners from all over India in all parts together, and perhaps it will be a beginning also of a consciousness, and it would be great if something does come out of it. We have about a minute or a minute and a half left. What do you think? What do you think? Yeah, what is the most important message you would like to give?
Well, can I just read a very short excerpt from James Baldwin, who I often turn to for inspiration, just because of this, the depth with which he looks at the role of the artist in society. And I think it's something very, very important. And I dedicate it to all my colleagues and my friends in the theater in India and all over the world, especially those who remain invisible, for various reasons. So James Baldwin says, I really don't like words like artist, or integrity, or courage, or nobility. I have a kind of distrust of all those words because I don't really know what they mean any more than I really know what such words as democracy, or peace-loving, or warlike, or integration mean. And yet one is compelled to recognize that all these imprecise words are attempts made by us all to get to something which is real and which lives behind the words. Whether I like it or not, for example, and no matter what I call myself, I suppose the only word for me when the chips are down is that I am an artist. There is such a thing. There is such a thing as integrity. Some people are noble. There is such a thing as courage. The terrible thing is that the reality behind these words depends ultimately on what the human being, meaning every single one of us, believes to be real. The terrible thing is that the reality behind all these words depends on choices one has got to make forever and ever and ever, every day. James Baldwin. Thank you.
Wow, what an insight, and reflecting actually the complexity of what we what we talk about. This is quite some really, and thank you. Now wonderful to know that this is so meaningful to you. If we completely now switch over, to another part of the world where something has happened that in a way got almost unnoticed. I think Guillermo from Chile is with us, and we had also one of the devastating talks. I do remember when Guillermo joined us and said, the police that was shooting out the eyes of young demonstrators on purpose, hundreds of them, it was the same police. Then they told them to, stay at home. They pretend to protect the government, the people in the name of the government, and that this was hope for the revolution, for a better life, a different life that was dreamed up by people on the streets would not come into fruition. But now there was a big election that happened, and at least from the outside, things seem to be different. Guillermo, tell us a little bit about Chile and what are your feelings as a writer, as an artist, as a James Baldwin artist that you are?
That's such a big question. Things are getting really, really intense here in Chile, and it's of course the pandemic. But right before the pandemic, we started a revolution of sorts. People went onto the streets. They couldn't take the price hikes and the transportation system in the capital city, Santiago, and they just took to the streets, and there was an explosion of violence. The government took the military to the streets, and there was a lot of killings. And as you said, the police were ordered to shoot to the people's faces, and they took out the eyes out of at least 500 people. So it was just a nightmare. But the protests kept going, and in such a way, with such so it was so massive that the government had to, in order to save itself from a true revolution, that decided to just accept the demands of the people to write a new constitution. So now we have elected a new body, basically a convention to write a new constitution. It started only 3 weeks, a month ago, to start writing a new constitution, and it's run by basically for the first time an indigenous woman is just heading this constitutional convention. Seeing her dressed in traditional indigenous garb and running this convention is just a revolution in itself for the country, of what it means, because this country has been very good at denying its historical past and its indigenous traditions, and it's basically during this whole history looking up to the US and Europe to just reimagine its own identity. But now things are coming back, and we are basically becoming a country made up of different peoples, and it's going to change the shape of the country. But this revolution was ongoing, and it had a lot of promise, and a lot of things were going to be changing, right? And this started in October 2019, and after a few months, we all know what happened, right? COVID arrived, and we went into complete lockdown, and the government used this opportunity to just quell the protest by using the restrictions of movement and the night curfew just to stop the protest. So basically, the curfew started in 2018, October 2019, and hasn't stopped until now. So we're basically heading up to 2 years of night curfew, which is basically the death of theater. So we haven't had a theater open in almost 2 years now, and people, of course, are desperate, and we are all. It's not only desperation about the money, which is, of course, a tragedy, but it's also the realization, as Sunil said so well, that we don't matter as much. Other things matter. We are basically on the same level as the gym or the nightclub, right? We're probably going to be open when those are open as well, which is a tragedy, because we know that people have been able to survive, and they have been able to keep their sanity by just watching movies on streaming, right? But watching Netflix or things like that. So we have played a role as artists, but not us. Basically, the centers of production of these international productions, but not the theater people, not the small theater people that we have been sort of producing knowledge and art for so many years, for not only for the culture of the country, but also to give this new revolution that happened that I'm talking about, give its meaning and its emotion and its thought. We have been able to sort of give them soul to this revolution before it actually happened. And our pay, of course, our reward right now is basically stay at home and just accept the mighty strength of the state that can crush you really easily by just pushing you into staying into your in your home, basically not making money. So the government did nothing much, but what they did do was open the grants again. So we had no money whatsoever, but in the middle of the pandemic, we had to rush to create new ideas in order to just compete for the few grants that they were giving away. So that it was just an extra layer of cruelty, right? We have no money, but we have a little bit of money, but then you're going to have to compete for this money. And of course, the ones getting the money were the ones who had more experience, who had basically bigger names in the sort of in the world of theater. So it was just reinforcing the sort of the privilege we already had, the people who like us who are more consolidated in our field. So right now we are very optimistic because the infections are down for the first time in a long time. We're allowed to go out on weekends for the first time in a long time, and it looks like we're going to have a new constitution, and that is looking up as well. But at the same time, they're reopening schools in a week or two, and we know what happens, right? There's going to be a third wave, and it's going to be even harsher this time. And we all know what's going to happen with Delta. So it's complicated because we don't know if we have to enjoy this little bit of freedom that we're going to have for a few weeks, and we should just be happy and go out and pretend nothing happens, or we should just prepare, just see our friends and see our company again for a couple of sessions, and then go back into our caves. So it's a complicated feeling in that we're happy, but we know that this happiness is not going to last.
Incredible. So really for 2 years, you just say, oh, we can go out for a weekend. So for 2 years, you couldn't go out. You haven't seen no performances. You basically stayed at home every night, more or less.
Curfew. Yeah, every night we have stayed at home. Curfew has been moving from 7 p.m., sometimes 9 p.m., and now they're moving into 10 p.m. So, which means that can possibly exist. Theater can be possibly presented anywhere. So, and we don't even try because there's one company that dared to do it, and they got infected, and one very famous actor died after a couple of performances. So that was everything we needed to know about the possibility of contagion within the theater companies and the context of presenting.
Yeah, and the talk we had when you said, curfews were imposed, and theater closed in time of Corona, but we knew that. There's the same thing that happened at the time of the uprising and the revolution, and by the same government. How schizophrenic is that really to deal with? On the other hand, that constitution that was in place since General Pinochet, is being rewritten. If I understand right, people elected for that council were not even the traditional leftist parties. They were really people who were part of street movements, people who were activists. So it is something absolutely extraordinary. It's one of the most inspiring news, at least from the outside, I have heard around the world in that time of Corona. So we always say artists are on the right side of social justice, of progressive justice. They are on the right side of the fight for freedom and democracy. And if governments would listen to them, the world would be a better place. So I'm asking you, Guillermo, as an artist, in the sense of Sunil, what he said about Baldwin, and your work is so brilliant and great. What do you see? What will happen? How hopeful are you that this is a revolution, that this is something that will be sustained?
Well, I'm hopeful. Again, the election of the Constitutional Convention was really good for people who want to change, and 2/3 of the Constitutional Convention is basically the left.
Yeah.
So those are the people that were on the streets. Yeah, and people in the streets, basically people with no education got elected. People who came from all different walks of life got elected to the convention. So that's really great, and they are really willing to change a few things that are going to change the shape of the country. Basically, taking back a couple of big resources in the country, basically minerals such as copper and lithium. But maybe hopefully they're going to be put back on the hands of the people and and take them away from transnational corporations. Then they're going to basically make the water a public good, because now it's in the hands of the private sector. So basically, they steal all the water to produce really beautiful avocados, and then people basically run out of water in their towns, and they have to buy water from far away. And yeah, as a side note, we're going through the worst drought in 1,000 years here. The country is actively becoming a desert. So on top of this, we need to act really urgently to just stop this, and just to change a law such as the law of ruling the management of the water in order for the people to survive. So it's an emergency coming from different directions, and the only way to survive basically is just more democracy, more power to the people, and just a little bit of more art. And honestly, I think that for us, we need to be able to just art needs to bring, quote unquote, soul back to our bodies, because we are in a desperate situation. And I think we can do that. I mean, it's going to sound arrogant, but artists will understand that we can bring soul to the world, and we can put this together. It's not something that I can do, but it's collectively we can do it. Just give us a sense of being human again, and I recommend being exposed to art, especially after this. We can show it, and also joy. We need a lot of joy, and throughout this pandemic, I've been driven to comedy, not because I have a lot of, and I can do it very well, but I know I need it, and I know that people around me need it. And after this is over, I'm not going to be seeking art or theater that is going to explain to me what happened during the pandemic, because I know it so well, and it hurts so bad. I'm going to be seeking something more than that. Maybe I'm going to be driven to sort of understand what people felt throughout the pandemic, but with a deep sense of joy and optimism, because the despair and the pain I will not be able to take any longer anymore. So that's the way, at least that's the way we're thinking and talking in our company, at least.
Yeah, incredible. And one of the great plays I saw is the one you wrote about the Museum of Torture, your Never play about Chekhov. You wrote a screenplay that the film got an Oscar nominated. You are such a great artist, and it's still the government puts you, basically you're in your home, you can't go out, you don't get the support even for small space. It's a shocking of that kind of social fantasy that is being held back, as so many other things than for what it represents. Guillermo, I don't know, in case you present, I don't know if you had a reading or wanted to read something, let us know. If not, I have some more questions for you.
Yeah, maybe questions are better right now. I mean, I have a little reading, but
maybe do the reading. So we have that. If you have a reading, do the reading, and we go back through the time that what we have.
it's a long reading,
Yeah.
but maybe you can stop me.
We have also 4 more minutes left. You can do a 4-minute reading. You said
Oh,
so
okay.
much. Yeah, please
Okay,
do go.
then
This is about
okay,
art
then
too.
yeah. So let me say goodbye and I go to the reading. And just to
Okay.
say that this is a piece I wrote for the Royal Court, and it was produced there as of course as a theater video production. I don't even know what to call them, this new genre, but it was a beautiful experience, and I guess it has a little bit of this sentimentality. Well, I want to say sweetness and joy that I was looking for. So just give me a second. Okay, the piece is called Red, and I'll just stop when the time is up.
I'll tell you. Yeah.
So okay, thank you. So Red. I guess I'm never going back to London. Never again. It's heartbreaking, but true. The reason? Well, we're not supposed to take flights anymore. The warming. Yeah. The thing is, I live far away. South America. Far. The last station. And in order to get to London, I need to fly 13, 15 hours. It's too much. This place is becoming a desert. Yeah, a desert. Well, now, tourists take planes all the time. And let's face it, most people are still going to do it. Not me, though. I have a conscience. And my conscience tells me I can't fly back to London ever again. It's heartbreaking because I really like London. I've been there a few times. I love those buses, the parks, the red, the usual stuff. But I loved a lot more of London. Now, this is what I'm going to really miss from London. I'm going to miss my own story. Yeah. For example, and this is true. When I was 29, I got divorced in London. True story. One morning, my wife sat me at the kitchen table and told me she was in love with someone else. Not with me. Not anymore. Fair enough. Love is love, and love ends in surprising ways. Now, this didn't happen in London. It happened in some town in Italy. It was snowing outside. Yeah. So I said, listen, we don't need to break up right now. Why don't we meet in London? We have a trip planned anyway. We have our plane tickets. Let's give each other a break. Yeah, let's take a break. Let's meet in London in 30 days. Sure, yes. And 30 days later, we did meet in London. I had hopes. I hoped London would provide some needed romanticism. Well, we met at the Gloucester store, at the Gloucester Road 2. Lots of hostels around there. Not very good, but good enough. She showed up unhappy, her face red from crying. In a couple of minutes, she explained it was over. The end. Okay, fine. I had been preparing for this, so I said, fine, let's go for a walk. And it was a great idea. After a few minutes, we were smiling and talking. I mean, we were still sad, but it was a friendly separation after all. Thank you.
Thank you.
This just the beginning of a longer piece, of course.
the piece, yeah, and about a place you can get to and an end of something, you know, with in the big uncertainty what's coming. Really, Guillermo, really thank you. And again, we could have a full hour. We could have a full hour with Sunil, and we should have a full hour and more with Guillermo. But let's now move over and go to Thailand. Sasapin is with us, and thank you for listening to both of your colleagues. And so tell us a little bit of what is going on. How does the morning look like? How is the feeling on the streets?
It's a very bleak morning in Thailand. Firstly, I'd like to say I'm really grateful to be back on this UK, Frank, and also to share this with Sunil and Guillermo, and to hear the stories from other corners of the world. It is a bleak morning because just last night we had 3 people left dead on the street, like literally left dead on the street because of COVID and because of the delay in responding to the situation of the government and the people involved, just like anything. In contrast to what happened 2 days ago, just a couple of days ago, where we had another protest. And the government was so ready and prompt in gathering all these water trucks and rubber bullets to shoot and fire at the protesters, even when they did not advance or make any violent act just yet. But they were so super prepared, and we just could not understand, although it wasn't a surprise for us, but we couldn't understand how could respond so promptly to such a thing and not the other things that they should be attending to. And this is kind of the current situation right now. I woke up having lots of messages of anger and grief and despair from fellows, and I'm very emotional right now hearing stories from other places in the world. In a sense, it's kind of feel a little bit comforted to feel connected to, you know, like Chile and India, but it's sad to know that we're connected in this way. We're connected with our situations that's not even fit for human beings. And injustice and cruelty. And very interestingly, a lot of details are very similar to what's happening in Thailand as well. So it makes me question the hearts of some human beings. And I don't understand how, if you are a human being, how you could let these things happen. And especially when you are the one in positions of power, that you can turn things from down to up, right to left, black to white. We are in the situation where people who have those capacities decide to stay silent to matters that are important and act very quickly on the things that are trivial and would make them gain more money and power in the face of increasing deaths every single day. And now the deaths are really out on the streets right now. We have similar cases approaching the Indian situation, which I'm glad to hear that it's calming now, subsiding, but we're having those situations now. Temples are full, morgues are full, hospitals are closed, announcing closing of, they're closing, accepting new cases now because they're full capacity. I feel like we're running out of hands and help, and I know it's gonna pass, but just this one morning where I happen to be here, it's a very bleak morning indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, really, thank you. Thank you for sharing. You know, maybe tell a bit about your work, what you do.
Yeah, mainly right now, I am artistic director of BIPAM, and BIPAM is Bangkok International Performing Arts Meeting. And alongside of that, I'm also a theater artist myself. What we're doing is, of course, according to the situation, we have just decided to migrate completely online this year, our annual gathering, which is on the 1st to the 5th of September. And it's quite sad to not have it at least a hybrid form as we intended, because we really wanted to do something that could gather people together and do something meaningful that would connect people in the deeper levels again. But that's not going to be possible. We were really having a lot of energy just yesterday, I think, trying to prepare for different things online. But when the situation, escalated from yesterday's evening up until this morning, I feel a bit of a down again. But then we're going to get back to work and do this. And BIPAM is a platform that for performing arts practitioners and artists, focusing on Southeast Asia and connecting the region and the local scene to international scenes and international communities. For myself, I am a movement-based performer, physical theater performer, and I'm very much interested in social critique. Also, B-Floor Theater, the company that I belong to, we have been focusing on giving alternative insights and questions to the society on the things that sometimes are obviously there and sometimes are not obviously there. And even before Thailand has become so political and so dividing, we were already asking questions that nobody wanted to hear and answer and think about. And we'll still do that. Yeah. So
incredible.
that's
so tell us a bit, the messages, I guess are they from artists, friends? What did they say this morning when you just opened the computer? What are those messages?
We are very angry, and I think we feel like we are being robbed of capacity and energy and brain, because we feel like we're being drained in every single way. It feels like they are at war with us, the government, the state, the powers, the elites, by having them continuing to do what they do, which has not made sense for a long time and still not making sense. We feel like, we're at war with them, and communication is not happening. Everything we do seems to be in conflict with each other, which is not supposed to be the way. It's not the solution for getting out of all this crisis together. Communication has to happen, but it's not happening. But instead, everything that we suggest, we feel, we do seems to be taken as an attack by the state. And they're very, very, very ready to attack us back in very tangible ways, like by law, imprisonment, disappearances, violence, sending officers knocking at your door for the little things that you do. Actually, not little things, things that you are entitled as a human being to be doing.
The wrong Facebook message can get you in trouble, right? That's
stuff like that. Really, like, come on, go get vaccines out instead of hunting people down from their Facebook post. What the heck are you doing, really? So I think we have a lot of this frustration and anger brimming, and I'm not very hopeful for the short-term future, but I do think that the society is actually changing, although this is a very long-term kind of projection. I think the society is changing in the deep sense. The mentality of the people is changing. We have a lot of potential ready to explode and go forward, but it feels like all this is blocked by some layer on top. It's like you're being blocked above your head, that you can't lift your heads above the surface because you're literally being blocked. But people are very ready to get out from here. People have ways, people are already managing things on their own. It's like Sunil said, people are helping ourselves, artists are moving on. We don't know how, but we just do it. We've been doing it. But there's this one, this wall on top of our heads that once this is broken, I want to live to see that day when it happens. And I hope we survive. Yeah.
You talked about the dead people on the street, the 3 or 4. So tell me, these are like people who died from corona but were not taken away? Or tell a bit more what.
Yeah, so there are people are left to so if you have means, of course you can get yourself hospitalized or treated when you are sick with COVID or without COVID. But right now the hospitals are full and people don't have access to healthcare because everything is not everything is for free, and the things that are provided for free are very scarce, and you feel like beggars having to wait on the street, having to queue up just for a free test for COVID. And because the regulations around COVID is so strict, people feel panic and they feel like they have to be tested because they want to make sure that they feel safe. But the accessible testing or treatment, you have to wait. People come to queue up. People come from the provinces to Bangkok, queue up from like 3-4 in the morning until the evening, and sometimes they don't get anything. So that's kind of the state of as a human being. I think it feels very, very degrading to be standing there just waiting for nothing, and then feeling like you're begging for something that you don't deserve but you actually are entitled to. So as a result of these inaccessibility to healthcare services, we have people who cannot be helped in time. We have people who have fallen into emergency health state, made calls and contact to hospitals and all these centers that are supposed to be able to help out. They're not able to help. They're not able to send people. They say it's full. And so people just are left dead. It's not just on the streets. The streets are, of course, it's like dramatic in the news and people talking about it, but we have cases dead on the way to the hospital, dead in the house, dead as they wait for the next call from the hospitals, and things like this. And there's no apology, there's no measures. We don't see anything as a response to all these critical happenings. We don't see any signs of responsibility from people who we expect responsibility and accountability from. It's like people are just being led to deal with this every day, and nobody's going to do anything about it. There's only the people who are gathering. The very critical situation, which is very, I'm very angry about this. People who are angry about this are now gathering to do something about it. Is that we have construction sites, and many times the workers in there are treated very badly already in normal situations. A lot of them are migrant workers. And one of the measures that the government thinks is something that they're doing in response to the pandemic is closing all these construction camps and keeping the workers inside the camp. So pretty much you just leave them there and you close it up and they can't leave. Nobody can get in. And they think this is something that they did in response to help curb the situation. So now we have people gathering to call these camps and send in whatever's needed, making sure they're connected, making sure they have food, making sure they have fresh food, making sure children and women are provided with things they need. And if it wasn't for these like independent forces from the people, and I think maybe 80% or 90% of these groups are also artists, not just theater artists, but also visual artists. If it wasn't for these people, then we might even have more deaths. And yeah, and there's another mentality of not doing, a test, not doing tests in the country because they don't want the numbers to go up. So they can say the number stays here, but the actual number might be more, but because they're not tested, they're able to say that this is where we are and not actually here, and things like that. So
sure, it's shocking. It's unspeakable. I have to say I'm shocked compared to, we didn't talk so long ago, and and you were so upbeat. It was one of the most positive talk. Your ideas to put the festival together, to gather people, to talk to your colleagues in the region, in Australia and in other countries, in Indonesia, and So this is, it is shocking. And also what you say, you know, it reflects that we heard, for example, from Romania, Michaela Dragan, who's part of a Roma family, who said, you know, police would go into the houses, beat up people, and also not let them out because they think, oh, it's the foreigners or the Roma. These are the people who bring it in. And like you say, you know, as if the migrant worker are the problem. It's such a deep misunderstanding of the situation and the wrong reaction, you know, to a wrong conclusion. It's shocking. I don't know if you prepared anything to read. Maybe it's the time now, but we also, yeah.
I do. It's probably a 3-minute read.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I just read this book by a spoken word performance artist called Kay Tempest, and I really love the message that they've been giving out in this book called On Connection. And I would like to give this as a tribute to artists as masters of creativity. And in this book, Kay Tempest, I think they wove a poetic elaboration of creativity and connection. So the book, it is about how immersion in creativity can bring us closer to each other and help us cultivate greater self-awareness.
Okay.
It is about how fine-tuning the ability to feel a creative connection can help us develop our empathy and establish a relationship between ourselves and the world. Creativity encourages connection, and connection to true, uncomfortable self allows us to take responsibility for our impact on other people rather than going blindly through life in a disconnected buzz of one day into the next. In praise of creativity, in praise of music, in praise of theater, and in praise of gathering to feel together. These basic requirements humans have always needed and will always need to play, to create, to reflect, and to release. Simply, creativity is any act of love, any act of making. It could be that connection to another deeper world is most easily experienced by artists, but really, anyone who's ever meditated, prayed, studied the stars, cooked an important meal for people they love, thrown a punch, received one, built something with their hands, learned a skill because they had no choice, been in service to others, volunteered their time, found themselves in the edge of their sanity or at the edge of their experience, accepted a difficult truth, put themselves second, genuinely gone out of their way for somebody else, has felt it. Connection is not the sole domain for artists, but art is a good way of understanding the fruit of that other place where commonality begins. So this is an excerpt from Kay Tempest's book on connection, and this is for all lives lost to the pandemic, for all fools who corrupt for money and power and feed on greed and fail to act in face of death and suffering, for the times of separation and disconnection, and until we can really truly see each other in the eyes again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Frank.
Well, listen, thank you, Sasapin and Sunil and Guillermo. It's quite stunning what you all said and the contribution you made, especially also in this talk. And it's so serious, and it's about our lives. This is not just talking about some aesthetic preferences or things. This is really about what life is about. And yeah, we've still look death in the face, and theater always has been that space between the living and the dead. We often show dead people on stage, people who don't exist anymore. We listen to their thoughts, and or they die on stage, and even if they are already dead characters. So, but this is all now, especially hearing you talking about Taiwan now, and who knows what will happen in India and also in Chile. We will see, where this all will be going. It is important messages, and I'm so glad now we're listening to all of you that we put this together 2.5 or 3 weeks. So let's see how this goes. But it's quite. I'm so touched by what you said. So really, thank you, and I hope that there will be reckoning, that there will be good things come out of this, and I think Chile, in a way, is an example that things can change, that what is will not stay, and perhaps change already has started. And the great German poet Hölderlin, who said, if there is danger, that what will save us is growing also already somewhere. So thank you all.